Hey, ¿qué pasa, Calexico? Welcome back to the podcast. Like always, before we begin, I want to thank my sponsors. First of all, I want to thank my anchor sponsors. I want to thank Jake and Sergio. Thank you guys for sponsoring the podcast. Also want to thank David Gastelum. If you're thinking of buying or selling a home in the Imperial or San Diego counties, make sure you contact David Gastelum. He's not only a realtor, but an investor with over 20 years of experience. You can contact David at 760-235-9576. You can also find him on Facebook. Just search his name, David Gastelum. Gastelum, Gastelum. Also want to thank everybody out there that's, essential workers, frontline workers that are, either at the hospital, supermarkets, truck drivers, everybody that's, out there working and exposing themselves to this, virus out there. Thank you guys for, doing what you do. Really appreciate it. Also want to remind everybody that, it's really essential that we shop local as much as we can. Some of the businesses that are being affected the most with this whole pandemic is our local businesses. A lot of them are friends and neighbors, so let's make sure we help them out. Today's guest is somebody that, I've been following on Instagram for a while. That's how a lot of people who listen to the podcast know that's how I get a lot of my guest. He's been on my radar for a while, but I noticed what he was doing something really cool during these troubling times. And I was like, I can't, miss this opportunity to have him on and help him out as much as I can. My guest today is David Varela. He's the founder of Starts with Arts. David, thank you for being on.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
Before we get into the Starts with Arts and your fundraiser that's going on right now, can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
So I was born and raised in El Centro. Went through kind of the whole public school system. Graduated in 2000 from Southwest. Went into art school. Doing that for a while, and then in 2012, I started the Starts with Arts Foundation. With a friend of mine.
So you're from class of 2000 as well, me too.
Oh, cool, man. Yeah. Class of 2000. I was just thinking about that today. I remember right when we started the foundation, we had an event in El Centro, and Cheryl Walker, who sits in the council in El Centro, she came up to me and she said that there was something about the kids that graduated around 1999, 2000, 2001. There was something special about them, and she really didn't know exactly what it was, but that there was something special, that those kids graduating were going to do something special in the future. And I kept always thinking about that. And then today, before I jumped on the interview with you, I was thinking about a little bit more and thinking about my peers, at what they're doing now, and they're definitely doing, you included, doing something special.
Yeah. I guess to me, like, if I think about it, is, we're that generation that's in between the people that grew up, with the internet, and the people that, were like the pioneers that, because when we were like seniors, that's when like there was this boom in the internet. I remember going on AOL in the chat rooms, and so, we barely got exposed to both worlds, the world without internet and the world with. So I guess that kind of, if you ask me, that might have a little bit to do with why, we're a little bit, I'm not going to say like more creative, but like, we have this, this balance between like art, something that you do manually, and then something that you're able to do, digitally and stuff like that.
Right. I think we're old enough to remember that we researched through encyclopedias before Google, and we remember cordless phones and that horrible sound the internet would make to log in, and I think we haven't seen that until the generation where it went from radio to television. That we haven't seen a generation like that until now. And there's that comparison there too. Even in times like these, there's that comparison, that generation that had to step up, that was growing up from, the radio to the TV, to that generation that grew up from, not having internet to having internet, and that generation having to go through that pandemic now as parents and as just as a community.
Yeah. Yeah, it's crazy. Me and my wife were watching that movie I, Tonya, the story of Tonya Harding.
Yeah.
And the guy was talking on the phone, and he had this long cord that went from the kitchen down to their basement. I was like, man, I remember like doing that, like talking on the phone and, asking my parents to buy a long cord because I don't want to be like standing up in the kitchen or being able to, sit down on the couch while I talk on the phone, or not being able to pick up the phone when somebody was on the internet because otherwise you would disconnect them, and all this stuff that kids nowadays don't even know what it is.
Yeah, and I mean, it was crazy to remember like being on a phone call and then hearing a beep, and that was someone else trying to call you, and able to take that phone call, or star 69, we're that generation that were able to remember that, or be able to go outside and play with things like a stick or something that's outside of something that like a lot of kids nowadays they don't get to experience that.
Yeah.
I think thinking back what I was saying about Cheryl Walker saying that, I think that's what she meant. I think that's what she meant by saying that we're that generation that knew how much we didn't have, but we did have a lot, and then how it became easier through the internet, and us being able to take advantage of that and use the internet and those technologies for a positive thing.
Yeah, exactly. Going back to your nonprofit, can you tell us a little bit about Starts with Arts? How did you? I know you went to art school, and why did you decide to start this nonprofit?
Well, I grew up with my friend Alex Tamayo. We were both kind of on the same path. We both were known for artistic abilities. For our drawing and painting. We both went to art school. He went to San Diego. I went to Long Beach. But we always kind of kept contact, through the same friends that we had, the same kind of network that we had. It wasn't until, and I still remember giving him that phone call and us talking about, what we had gone through growing up, the art classes that we had, the teachers that inspired us, the people that inspired us, and how that was missing from what the kids were getting now because of things like budget cuts in the arts. So we had a long phone call, and we're like, let's come up with something where, we can give back to the community. I didn't know how to start a nonprofit. I knew about them. I knew about like the bigger nonprofits. I just didn't know how to start one. So I went back and I researched for a couple of weeks, couple of months, came up with the logo, came up with the name, and then went from there to doing all the necessary paperwork to make it legit.
Cool. So what is the main objective of Starts with Arts? Like, what do you guys focus on?
So kind of the story that I've always been told, or that I've always told, was that in 2012 I was part of an art show here in San Diego that I was invited to, and I had never shown my paintings. I'm that artist that always paints for kind of himself, or it's always been therapeutic for me. So for someone to ask me like, hey, come out and show your paintings was something very scary for me. So I went through the art show, and I told myself that if I sold these paintings, that I would try to donate those paintings to the people that made it possible, and that's giving back to my elementary school, Martin Luther King Jr. Elementary School in El Centro, and I wanted to be able to donate something to them, kind of as a thank you. At that time, I was already a professional graphic designer as my career, and I was able to paint and sell it and stuff like that. So I ended up selling both paintings that I entered the show with, and I think I came up with like maybe $300-$400 from that sale. And so that the next day I called the school, and I spoke with someone, maybe the secretary or someone in the office, and I told them that I had this check that I wanted to donate to the school. And there was maybe like a 2 minute silence, 2 or 3 minute silence. And she explained to me that she didn't know what to do. She didn't know how to go about it because no one had ever donated to their school, and no one had ever donated to the arts. The next day, the principal calls me and she invites me to come to the school and kind of give me the tour of, the classrooms that I went to. And I was surprised. I was able to meet the same art teacher that I had in third grade, Mrs. Bryant. But she was no longer teaching art full time. She was actually teaching just a general education in the classroom, and then giving little art classes here and there because they didn't have the money to buy the supplies. So I made sure that I gave her the check to purchase art supplies to continue that program that I remembered to teach those kids. And then going back home, driving back home to San Diego, I started thinking about, wow, if this is happening to one school, I wonder how many other schools it's happening to. So I started calling principals, started calling teachers and friends that were, that knew people in the school district, and found out that there was a lot of budget cuts in the arts. There was a lot of money going into things like sports and other programs, but art was being kind of thought of as an extracurricular activity. It wasn't in line with things like math, science, and history. So that's kind of what birthed the Starts with Arts Foundation, that I wanted to start raising money, or that me and Alex wanted to start raising money to purchase art supplies and be able to support teachers that wanted to continue teaching art in elementary schools. So that's kind of where it started. It started with something as small as a $300 check. A lot of it in the beginning came out of our own pockets. If a teacher would email us, I'd get emails and calls like at 5 a.m, 6 a.m. from teachers saying like, hey, do you guys have any supplies that we could use? So we would go out and purchase supplies and give them to the teachers, and to make sure that they had, or that the kids had an opportunity to do some art. And for us, we knew how important art was in the classroom. That not only was it someone learning how to paint, but that it invoked those motor skills that we need, those motor skills and creativity and the imagination.
Yeah, I think especially like imagination. A lot of kids nowadays spend a lot of time, playing video games, and they don't really exercise that, their own imagination to create and draw things like that. I was never somebody that drew, but I remember like I think other ways I used my imagination was writing. The other day my mom brought me the certificate I got in junior high where I had entered some contest, and I think I got like second place or something. But yeah, nowadays kids, their focus is like super short. I was reading an article where SpongeBob, the time they change scenes is like every 2 seconds they're changing a scene. So kids are used to like being fed information like super fast, and drawing is something that takes time, takes patience, and yeah, I feel it's a great way to have kids be more imaginative and be more creative. I know that you said that you donate to schools and stuff like that, but you also do hold community events where you invite the community to different events.
So how it started with Starts with Arts is we were trying to figure out a way to get into the classroom. We knew that it was important for us, Starts with Arts, to get into the classroom to support the teachers further, and to start legitimizing what arts education was and the positive effects it had on these kids. So we started by coming up with exercises or activities that were under the core standards. But what we were doing is we were dissecting those exercises until we found something that was more creative, that there was some kind of art element, and we started teaching that to the teachers. So what we did is we opened up a studio in El Centro on Main Street, and we would invite teachers to come in, and we would teach them things like, do you remember in school where we were taught the plant cell and the different parts of the plant cell? Well, what we were doing is we were telling them, like, hey, there's kids that really don't take to understanding exactly what comes straight out of a book and, you know, what the different parts of the cell. But what if we add art into it? What if we made different parts of the cell different colors? If there were different, different materials or something like that that would trigger something in the kid's brain to remember those parts. And it had a positive effect. Kids were learning how to identify parts of the plant cell just by memorizing, the different colors or the different sketching or shadowing that we were teaching those teachers. And it was all under the core standard they had to teach in classrooms. And so what we did is we would give those supplies and we would give those exercises to the teachers to use in the classroom. So that's kind of a sneaky way that we found ourselves getting into the classroom to be able to support the teachers, to say, like, hey, we're actually teaching them biology through arts education. So not only were they teaching biology, but they were also giving the kids the opportunity to learn an art lesson. And that's where it started. Then we started getting asked by community members, other parents, and asking them if we could come out to a fair for them or a fundraiser that they were having, just to have art there for kids. And so it started that way, where we'd have little workshops where the kids would go out there and then they'd paint. But what me and Alex saw was an opportunity, since we had the attention of the kids, that we would be able to teach them something. So not only would we have a workshop where the kids would paint, but we'd also have that opportunity to sit there and teach the kids, like, this is why you're painting. This is where this lesson came from, to give them some kind of history in arts education. And that went very well. And so we started using arts education and using our workshops as a tool to raise money for these organizations. So we worked with people like, the Girl Scouts. We worked with people like Easter Seals in El Centro, where we'd go in there and do projects with their kids and the family, and invite the community to come and see it. So it would raise funds for them, but it also raised attention towards what their cause was. So that's kind of where that line was blurred between arts education and giving back to the community.
That's awesome. Like I said, I was looking through your Instagram, and I saw these last couple of weeks you've been fundraising. Can you tell us about this project you have going on right now, the fundraiser you have right now?
Yeah. Well, I still use the same kind of template that I've been using since the beginning. So whenever we have something that we want to raise money for or towards I start sending emails out to everybody. I remember I came up with my own personal promotion or kind of fundraiser thing, where I would try to send out 1,000 emails in a week, and they would be to anybody. They'd be to like people, like, try to reach out to like Justin Bieber's manager, or so something silly as that, to something sending an email to the president, and to say, like, hey, this is the Imperial Valley, this is something that we're raising money towards, and just kind of bring attention and to see what happens. And I would get maybe once an email back from people. Sometimes it'd be like a sponsorship saying that they wish they could help, but they didn't have the money, or just people giving us support. Until one day I received an email from it was a government email, and I was kind of afraid to open it because I thought it was going to be one of those donate money to a Nigerian prince or something like that. So I opened up the email, and it was from the office of President Barack Obama. And so I started writing the email, and it said, like, "Dear David," and in that letter, it started answering all the questions that I had sent him. asking him what he thought about arts education and kind of introducing the Imperial Valley and the people that were out here to him. And he answered that. And I still have that email to this day. And I go back to it every time there's a new fundraiser to remind myself that I can send an email to anybody and see what kind of response I could get. And I've always been the shy type where I didn't like calling people, or I didn't like to be the face that starts with arts. So writing emails was easy for me. It was an easy way to hide myself, but also be, let them know everything. And I could be very creative in my writing. So we started getting, donations from people like Tom's Shoes, Vans, big corporations like that, and then also smaller people, just mom and pop shops in El Centro, Strangers Bar. They have always been a huge supporter of us, and actually a lot of people down Main Street have been huge supporters of us, and they've been able to help us with either a monetary support or just be there for us with anything that we needed. So that's kind of how that started. So even now, I still do that. When there's a cause, when the pandemic hit and everyone was stayed at home or had to stay at home, I try to come up with a way that I could give back. And the first thing that I always fall to was those emails. And I started sending people emails, and of course, half of them are sorry I can't, but I support this, and the other half was, hey, how could we help? And let me send you some donations to help further your cause.
So right now the fundraiser is about you're trying to collect funds to buy say protective gear for people on the front lines, or just people in general that might need them.
Yeah. So when we were asked to stay home through the pandemic, schools were shut down. So that means pretty much Starts with Arts was shut down, or at least that part of Starts with Arts, where we couldn't go to the classrooms any longer, or we weren't able to connect with the teachers or the students so easily. So like many other businesses, nonprofits, and groups, we had to pivot, and then that's pivot into a direction that we had to be creative in the way of how we wanted to give back to the community that was in such need. And so I looked into, I knew how hard it was for myself to purchase, to find masks, to find hand sanitizer when everyone was buying paper towels and toilet paper. It was hard for myself to be able to make sure that my own family had that kind of stuff. That I started to imagine how hard it was for people who were coming from lower income situations. Me and my wife, my family, we do okay. But I started thinking about those people that we've met through the years that had hard times purchasing, school supplies for their kids, and how they were going to come up with money to buy these supplies that were going to save their lives. So, we pivoted, and my wife and I came up with the idea of wanting to start purchasing face masks and other safety supplies for families in the Imperial Valley that needed it. And it started that small. It started, families would reach out to us and say like, hey guys, is there any way you guys can help with this? Or we started reaching out to friends and family saying, hey, if you guys know a family that's in need of, some extra support around this time, let us know, and we'll try to purchase those items for them. So that started, it started that small. And then my wife and I, first off, shout out to my wife. I have to shout her out. She's been the strongest supporter of Starts with Arts at a time where we thought, when Alex and myself kind of separated ways, he started his own nonprofit, and I kind of stayed with Starts with Arts, but we started losing funding, or we weren't getting any more funding. And she came in and kind of reinvented Starts with Arts to what it is now. All right. So shout out to her. But going back to myself and my wife, we were watching a show on HBO called, I think it's called Real Sports with Brian Gumbel. And at this time, like, since there's no sports, like, I'm down to watch anything that's involved with it. If it's news, if it's, I was watching, I don't know if you, the ESPN Ocho, where they were having like bowling and like other like sports that, you know, they never show, but they were showing them.
Yeah.
Like, I needed my sports fix. So I was watching Brian Gumbel, and he was doing this story on this company that used to do lacrosse equipment. And what they saw was doctors needing safety supplies. So what they did is they also pivoted themselves, and they turned all their manufacturing warehouses into warehouses that were manufacturing 3D face shields. So they were using that same material, the same plastics that they use for lacrosse equipment. They were now using them for face shields, and they were donating them to frontliners, to teachers. I mean, to teachers, doctors, and nurses. And I thought, man. And after that show ended, me and my wife were thinking, like, man, if this is happening in one company, I wonder how many other companies are doing the same thing. And that's when we learned about, like, New Balance was taking the materials from their shoes and their shoelaces to come up with masks to donate. And I started remembering again a thing that Cheryl Walker has told me about our generation, is that generation that was going through World War II, or the World War One and World War II, how they also had to pivot and turn their warehouses and turn their businesses into, you know, helping the nation. So I started researching it, and I started becoming more involved in the companies that were doing it, and being super inspired, that I started contacting these companies and asking them, or telling them about the Imperial Valley, telling them about the different groups that were out there that could use these donations. So there was companies like Dodo cases that they do iPad and iPhone like covers and cases, but they were now doing face masks. So we contacted them, and they said, you know, they were 100% supportive, and they sent over a bunch of adult and kids masks that we actually just donated to the Imperial County firefighters.
Okay.
And so another group that we've always worked with, and that we fell in love with when we started working with them, is the Cancer Resource Center of the Desert. Maybe like a year or two ago, we donated a bunch of backpacks full of supplies to their kids, and it's a great group. It's a great program. They give support to those kids and families that are going through cancer, to help them with treatment. Make sure that they have not only food and clothing, but that they're also given the transportation needed to go to and from hospital and doctor visits. And so we started thinking about frontliners and those people that needed supplies the most. Those kids and those families were the first people to kind of pop up in my head. Imagining them being so worried to go to a doctor visit or to a treatment session, where they were so scared that they would contract COVID-19, and they were already battling cancer themselves. So I was thinking, you know, these kids and these family members, they need it now. And so that's what we did. So we started reaching out to all these groups. We reached out to, we found individuals and families outside of California that were using their own 3D printers to build face masks, to make face shields, and they were donating them to any organization that could use them. So just last week, or actually a couple of days ago, they had just received them. We send the Cancer Resource Center, over 300, 400 face masks, latex gloves, so they can help and give those out to their families.
Yeah, especially those people going through treatment and stuff like that are really vulnerable to COVID, right, since their defenses are kind of low. Yeah, that's I saw you because I think I first saw that the Cancer Research Center of the Desert was asking for supplies that they needed mass for these families, and then right after that's when I saw you were doing a fundraiser, and then a couple of days later you donated the supplies to them, and I thought it was really cool. It was really awesome. What's something that you miss the most from not being able to be out there in the community with your nonprofit?
I mean, I miss doing the workshops with the kids. I mean, when it comes to art, I'm still a big kid at heart. So it's those kids that I find inspiration through the stuff that they do in class and in the community that inspires me, that keeps my own creativity and my own mind fresh and young, is that I'm able to re-experience all that creativity with them. If it's the first time that they're doing an art activity or seeing them interact with their own parents and family, that's the best. I mean, of course, we do a lot of these things to help raise money to support arts education. But when we can help, a kid or a family either get art supplies or put them together to build a relationship through arts education, that means everything to us. So whenever there's a week or a month that we're not doing that, that of course that breaks my heart to not be able to do that. And just recently we had gotten some funding to start going back into the classrooms and doing more programs with the El Centro Elementary School District. We also had a program that we were doing with the Calipatria State Prison, working with them and the city of Calipatria. So those things are put on hold. But we're definitely looking forward to getting back and doing those. I grew up through the migrant education program. So that's kind of the first thing that I'm going to be working on when classes go back and I'm able to work with the kids and teachers again.
Cool. If people want to reach out and donate, what's the best way they can do so?
There's a couple of ways now. It used to be just my email, which is startswitharts@gmail.com. But again, like I was saying, my wife, Anitra, has, reinvented Starts With Arts. So now we have a website, startswitharts.org. People who just want to donate directly, we have our Venmo and PayPal available. We try to keep a strong, up-to-date social media presence through Instagram and through Facebook, where people can get information on how to donate, how to become a volunteer, or just to see what we do as a program and who we are. I like to keep photos of, as much as I can of the events that we do and the kids and teachers that we come across and work with.
Cool. Yeah. I mean, that's how I found you, through Instagram. And yeah, I went to your website and it's pretty up to date, and there's a lot of information there.
And we get a lot of support from here in San Diego, surprisingly, like in Los Angeles, San Francisco, and there's support coming in from even as far as New York, helping us fund our program and the activities that we do. That I'm also always trying to push local businesses in the Imperial Valley and asking them for their support. I know some of it's really hard to give to art education when you just see it as a fun project for kids that get to post their art on a refrigerator. But if they see what we've done and what we're doing in the future, they get a better understanding that it's more than that. It's a lot more, having to do with, creativity, and to use that as a tool to better their education. One thing we always get a parent or two that ask me, why we're doing this, if we want all the kids to become artists, and that's not what we want. I'm a graphic designer, so the last thing I want to do is, have my job taken away by someone who's even better than me. And so a lot of people won't admit that, but what we're trying to do is we're just trying to exercise the creativity. And a story I tell him is my dad a few years ago was diagnosed with prostate cancer, and he had to go through a surgery to remove that cancer. And what I found out that um, the procedure was going to be done by a robot in El Centro. And I kept thinking about it, and I started to imagine that person who came up with the concept of that robot had to have seen it in some kind of cartoon or some kind of movie when he was a little kid. And and that little kid coming up with that, to come up with a robot that's going to save someone's life, that's going to save my dad's life in the future, kind of like a reverse Terminator now that I think about it. But it's yeah, that robot ended up saving my dad's life, and he's cancer free to this day. And that's the story I tell to the parents, is that no, we don't want all the. I mean, if they want to become artists, I think you should support that. But I want these kids to use that motor skill, that the creativity that they have, so they can use it when they want to become a doctor, and that so they're not just staying in a box, that they're using that creativity and the imagination that we're going to need, not just now, but in the future, to come up with things like a cure for things like diabetes, AIDS, and cancer that are taking our parents away from us, our grandparents and kids away from us. Yeah. So that's the creativity that Starts with the Arts Foundation supports. That's something that I support. Education I grew up in a family of 7, the youngest of 5, and my oldest brother went to Stanford University, so the bar was set really high, and the education was really instilled. My dad was a field worker for 40-50 years, and so education was instilled in us, and the hard work. But we had to, after high school, we were going to college. We were going to get an education, and all 5 of us did get a college degree. The hardest thing was telling my parents that I wasn't going to become an architect, that I wanted to go to art school. But it was their support, which is also important too. If there's parents that are going to be watching this, that it's important to get your kids involved in the arts, whether it be music, theater, the fine arts, sculpting, poetry, anything like that. But it's also huge that that they support what they're doing, because know that what they're learning in those classes or in those workshops is going to help them be what they want to be in the future. And I think that's something that me, that you and our friends and our peers had the opportunity and took advantage of when we were kids, that as a generation we owe it to ourselves to give back to the kids that are after us, and to make sure that they have that same education that we had.
Yeah, exactly. Wow, that was awesome. Yeah, it's crazy that you're the youngest of 5. Like you said, your brother set the bar really high, but that all of you were able to get a degree. Because most of the times you hear the stories where their parents were field workers, and they weren't there to really see their their school, like to make sure that they're doing their homework, so they probably just end up with a regular 9 to 5 that they're struggling to survive. But it's cool that your parents instilled education in you, and that you guys were all able to get a degree and make something out of yourselves. Because like I said, I grew up here in the Valley too. I know a lot of my friends that their parents were field workers, and there was no supervision, and they ended up not on the right path. And it's cool that you did, and that you're doing now as an adult. You're doing these things where you're helping out our community and our kids, and it's it's awesome. I really admire what you're doing.
Yeah, and that has a lot to do. I mean, my parents deserve all the credit for that. Yesterday at night, before our interview today, I was looking back at Ernesto Llerena's interview that you had with him, and kind of seeing the similarities how we grew up. Um, my dad, even being from a Yaqui background, coming into the United States through the Bracero program, and what he had to go through, and and his what was number one to him is to making sure that his kids didn't have to go through that. So what he did with us is that he made sure, even though he was working 10, 12, 14 hours a day, he made sure that he was on top. When he came home, that everyone was done with homework. He made sure that we were giving praise for whenever we had A's and B's, but whenever we slipped and had D's and F's, he would take us out to the fields. He would take us out to see what he was doing, and I went there once, and that's all I needed. That's all I needed to see that I didn't want to do that, and to understand that my parents wanted more for us. So there isn't, even now, I'm 38 years old, and my parents they still go to every fundraiser, every event that I throw with Starts with the Arts, and they're there to support me, and they still do that. They've done that since I was a kid, and they continue to do that. So I like to show parents that. I like to show parents that support never stops. Yeah. That it doesn't. And what I love so much about the Imperial Valley, and why I could have easily turned Starts with Arts into a foundation that's for San Diego, LA, and made it one of the big nonprofits to receive more money. But I didn't want to do that because I love the Imperial Valley and what we can do, what we've done as a community in the past, and what the potential it has, for the future. And then that's seeing it through the kids, and through, seeing us now, my peers and people around my age being parents now, and they're raising kids now, and we should be telling them, like, hey, it's okay to leave the Imperial Valley. I was always told by teachers that, hey, you're going to have the opportunity or the chance to leave the Imperial Valley, but just don't forget where you come from. And it's awesome to see, like, Ernesto still have all those ties to the Imperial Valley, and always coming back when easily everyone knows that he can be off in LA doing these big shows, in New York doing these big shows. But you see it through his art and through the way he speaks, that he has that love for the Imperial Valley and how he grew up. And again, and that's that generation that we live, that we're from, that we can use that as a positive to move on, and to show the kids that, yeah, you can do this, but remember where you come from. And I was always told that by teachers and my family, and this is me doing now. This is just me doing what I know best, and that's the arts, and using my advertising and marketing background to use that as an advantage to bring funding and to bring a spotlight to arts education and the creativity and the kids and the talent in the Imperial Valley.
Yeah. Well, David, thank you for sharing your story and your work. Is there anything that I didn't touch that you would like to talk about?
Yeah, just to kind of reiterate I want to push local companies, local mom and pop shops, to give back to the community. I know it's a really hard time right now to ask a family or ask someone to donate $1, $5, $10 when we're all trying to stretch $1. But it's a great investment. It's a great investment, not only for arts education, but for now. The Imperial Valley is probably the strongest anywhere, that when a community comes together, it's really there for their neighbor to help them when they're down. And we do that for each other. I would do that for any friend, anybody in the Imperial Valley. And I know we can do that. And one great example of it is this week we thought it'd be fun to include a sponsor of the week, where a local sponsor from the Imperial Valley would match dollar for dollar for anyone who donated. So if you donated $1, if you donated $5, that would be doubled from March and Ash. So if you donated $5, March and Ash in the Imperial Valley would donate $5, bringing your total to $10 donation. So I thought that was really cool of them to want to do, and even them being a company that's from outside of the valley, coming into Imperial and seeing the camaraderie and the community that's here in the Imperial Valley, and wanting to invest in that, and wanting to make sure that we're okay and taken care of during this pandemic. And as a nonprofit, we're a 501c3 nonprofit. There's a lot of groups, a lot of programs that'll tell you that, but we have like any legitimate nonprofit, we have our paperwork and stuff. And so what that means for you is that when you donate, you're also able to receive a receipt from us that you'll be able to use it in your taxes, as a 501c3. And also, what was I going to say? And that's really important too, that we were able to, legitimize yourself like we did early on, and to be able to say like, hey, we're going to do all the necessary paperwork so people that donate know that 100% of what they donate is going to that cause. And, I don't take a paycheck. My wife doesn't take a paycheck. Any of our board members or directors, they do this all voluntary. So everything that's donated, we try to make it as transparent as we can. We try to put totals of donations when we're done with our drive, totals of supplies donated, to make sure that that every dollar that you put into that drive is going exactly to where we want it to be. And for this fundraiser, it's making sure that frontliners, that's people that are in the hospitals, teachers, people that are working at at your local Vons or Walmart, people like the kids and the families of the Cancer Resource Center, that making sure that they have the supplies, that the minimal supplies, that's face masks, hand sanitizer, latex gloves, and make sure that they have that. And it's important that we take care of each other and make sure that we stand side by side, during this time.
Yeah, it's like you hear it a lot where it's like, we're in this together, and that's besides 9/11 when we are unified, this is something else, that the only other time where I can think we're really in this together, not only as a country, but everybody around the world is in this together. We're all vulnerable to this, and we're all doing a little bit of our part to try to minimize the spread and stay healthy. But yeah, like I said, thank you for taking this time. Thank you for what you do for the community, especially the Imperial Valley. I truly appreciate it. Like I said, I've been wanting to get together with you and kind of learn more about your nonprofit and the things you do. I'm glad that even though you're not doing the arts part, you're doing this fundraiser and all these things to help out our community. I really appreciate it. I want to thank everybody that's helping you out, your wife, Marsha Nash, anybody else that's been donating lately. Something that's commendable, that not anybody is taking their own money to help and support those people in need. And yeah, thank you for like I said, the time. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, and thank you for putting a spotlight on our program, Starts with Arts, and putting a spotlight on our drive. And thank you for doing that, not just for myself, but for everyone that you interview. There's people that I didn't know were in the Imperial Valley that you put a spotlight on, and it's awesome to follow them, to follow you in the interviews that you do. We'll have to do it again next time, because I've seen some interviews where you guys are drinking beers and having a good time. So we definitely will have to do that again. But I want to thank our weekly sponsor of March and Ash, and thank also there's a program that we forgot to thank, but it's the California Youth Coalition, and they're a program that we kind of buddied with, that are helping us out to make sure that we're able to purchase these supplies So you can, visit, through our website, get more information on them, and Starts with Arts. And please, if you're in a position where you can donate $1, $5, anything, $1 really, we make that stretch to make sure that, families are getting these supplies, families and frontliners are getting supplies. So if you can, please donate. If you can, please spread the word. I mean, we've seen what we can do in the Prio Valley with things when someone needs help or there's something. I mean, I'll tell friends, if we can get together and sell out rib cook-offs, we can come together and help families that are dying and help people that they need these safety supplies.
Yeah,
I think that's a good a note to leave on. If
yeah.
you buy a rib, you can buy a safety mask.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, how much do you spend on ribs? How you can donate at least
right. They always sell out too. And I don't think I've ever had one when I'm from the Imperial Valley.
Yeah, me neither. All right, David. Well, thank you once again. Don't hang up so you can say our proper goodbyes. But yeah, I want to thank everybody for listening. Want to make sure to remind everybody to check out startswitharts.org and Starts with Arts on Instagram to make sure to, find out more about the fundraisers, see how you can help. And stay safe, wash your hands, and we'll see you guys in the next one.